community center and management offices. Flyers were translated into Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. The 2016 draft plan and significant amendment to the 2015 plan were made available on June 26, 2015 for public inspection at NYCHA's principal office at 250 Broadway and on NYCHA's website. Copies were also available at each local public housing development management office, at all community operations, management, and leased housing borough offices, and at 5 designated community centers. 15 plan were also sent to all resident advisory board delegates and alternates, each tenant association president, and Section 8 RAB representative. In addition, NYCHA encourages residents, advocates, and the public to provide written comments on the draft plan and the amendment. Comments will be accepted via fax, through the mail, and collected at each of the town hall meetings. In an attempt to accurately reflect NYCHA's most critical priorities and needs, the draft plan and amendment are evolving documents. The purpose of this town hall meeting today is to provide a venue where residents and the public are invited to comment on the draft plan and the amendment. NYCHA staff will make brief presentations on the topics listed on the screen. There will then be an open mic for questions and comments. Please complete a speaker slip if you would like to make a comment on the plan or have any questions. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Clark, Senior Vice President for Operations, to talk about Next Gen NYCHA.
No applause? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please, please. So good evening, everybody. Safe, clean, and connected, right? Sounds good. That's where we want to be here at the Housing Authority, and that's really the vision behind Next Generation NYCHA. If we can go to the next slide. In fact, I'll signal when I put my finger up like this. It means go to the next slide. All right. So when the chair was first appointed by Mayor de Blasio, she was given 2 tasks. One was to reset the relationship with our residents, and the second was to come up with a sustainable plan for the near and far future for the Housing Authority. So Next Generation is really a 10-year plan for sustaining and growing the New York City Housing Authority. And what I mean by growing is actually increasing affordable housing in New York City. We have challenges right now. Our buildings, the average age of our buildings is in the mid-40s. We've had chronic, over the years, just not the past couple of years, but actually decades of disinvestment from federal, state, and city government. Our residents are aging in place. Many of our developments are becoming national occurring retirement communities, and with older folks, there's additional needs that are required. And we have, for this year, we have actually an operating deficit of $98 million. And if we were to continue to operate as we are today, in 10 years, our deficit would be over $425 million. So these are staggering challenges, but we're aware of them. And we have a plan to address that. It's a short-term plan, and it's a long-term plan. And it's the Next Generation NYCHA plan. So if we can go to the next slide. Our plan is really built on 4 objectives, really 4 goals. 1, to be sustainable for short term, for it to be financially sustainable for the short term and long term future. And we're seeing good signs already. Last year, the de Blasio administration forgave the payment to New York to the police department, and we were able to keep approximately $40 million, and apply that towards our deficit and also towards our backlog of work orders. This year, the de Blasio administration committed to not only forgiving the entire payment to NYPD, but also the pilot. That's the payment in lieu of taxes, to New York City, which is totaled altogether is about $100 million. So these are really great signs, unprecedented. I've been with the Housing Authority for 19 years and haven't seen that kind of support, from city government in my time here. So this is really a great sign, a good step in the right direction. Second goal is to operate as an efficient and effective landlord. So with the resources we do have, we have to make sure that we are being effective with what we're doing. And we really feel that we need to do. I think our tenants feel this way, as well as other stakeholders, elected officials. We really need to do a better job as a landlord. And we have plans right now, to improve that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit in a short time about how we want to change our operating model for managing our developments. And we're seeing, actually, right now, we're seeing some improvements in that as well. When you have aging infrastructure, when you have buildings that are 45 years old, you need to make sure that you're timely replacing the roofs, timely doing the brickwork, to protect the facades from water infiltration. Have to make sure that we are timely replacing our boilers and our elevators. And in order to do that, you have to have funding. So our plan is to increase the funding that comes in to the Housing Authority. We can't rely solely, upon federal government, federal subsidy. We have to identify and maximize other sources, for our finances. And then also, we need to really change the way in which we engage with our residents and provide services to our residents. For many years, actually, for decades, the Housing Authority has actually provided many of these services directly to our residents. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding to continue that. However, there are services available, from New York City and from nonprofit groups that we need to really leverage and connect our residents to. And that's what we're trying to do. We're going to actually change the model, delivery model, for these services by working with those, with our fellow city agencies, as well as the nonprofits, to work with our residents who need these different services. So that's a really high-level overview of the Next Generation Plan. It's really a call to action, and our residents that are here tonight, really, if you want to get involved, you can sign up, be part of focus groups. You can sign up at our resident engagement table right over there. You also can stay connected online through our website. If you need additional information, you can certainly talk to your local property management office. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the dynamic Amy Stokes to tell us all about the development opportunities that we're pursuing.
Thank you. So the first part of Next Gen NYCHA that focuses on the rebuild portion that Brian just outlined is NYCHA basically has identified or focused on 3 development sites where we'll be able to leverage our land for 100% affordable housing. So that's 100% of low-income housing that would be constructed on 3 land sites in conjunction with working with a third-party development firm. So the 3 sites that we identified through through Next Gen engagement with the residents at Ingersoll, Millbrook, and Van Dyke. We sort of focused on creating, so we worked with those residents to basically to figure out what kinds of properties they would want, whether they wanted to focus on senior housing they wanted senior housing on their property or at the development, if they wanted family housing. So Ingersoll is going to focus on senior housing. Millbrook will have senior housing with community space, and Van Dyke, there's a proposed development for family units. In addition to working with a development partner, NYCHA will also ground lease the property. So that enables NYCHA to continue to have ownership and preserve long-term affordability. So by having a ground lease, we're able to ensure that the property will remain affordable for the long term. The RFP for the 3 Next Gen sites was released a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be getting feedback and proposals from development partners in the next coming weeks. One of the benefits is that by working with a development partners that we'll be able to negotiate for a development fee, and which those funds will be reinvested back in NYCHA. So we'll help with this deficit that Brian just outlined. In addition, residents will have the opportunity to apply for the units, so to provide more affordable housing to the community and new units for residents. The second part of the development plan that I want to focus on is RAD, which is the Rental Assistance Demonstration. And that project is focused on Ocean Bay Bayside in Far Rockaway, Queens. So the Rental Assistance Demonstration is a HUD program that's going on with a lot of public housing agencies all over the country. But this program allows us to fully rehabilitate the property, the 24 buildings at Ocean Bay Bayside. So it's about $161 million of a 15-year capital need that we'll be able to address over 2 or 3 years. And how we're able to do this is basically we take public housing subsidy, which is a 1-year commitment from HUD and is subject to congressional appropriations. So we might get a lot less than we ask for, and we usually do, and that will transferred into a long-term special Section 8 contract, which will be able to take that contract and go to the private market and raise funds. But it's a special Section 8 contract, so it's automatic. Unlike traditional Section 8 contracts, this one has mandatory renewals. So NYCHA is able to ensure also long-term affordability through the mandatory renewals of the Section 8 contracts. We'll keep all the units affordable, permanently affordable. Additionally, the special RAD is, like I said before, is special Section 8. So the residents that are currently in the properties will remain there. So they're not subject to income limits that happens under traditional Section 8. Additionally, they remain, the RAD tenants will keep their termination and grievance procedures will be in line with public housing residents. They still receive tenant protection vouchers, and there's actually an added element under RAD that's a choice mobility option that allows residents after a year, if a Section 8 voucher is available, they go to the top of the list and can move anywhere in the country. So really the goals of this program at Ocean Bay are to safeguard long-term housing assistance, improve and modernize the properties, and stabilize the properties on solid financial footing. So like I said before, it's at Ocean Bay Bayside, which is 1,400 units. This is the first RAD transaction for New York City. It encompasses 24 buildings. And the anticipated timeline is that we are going to try to have an RFP, which is a request for proposal, where we solicit a development partner in the winter of 2015. We anticipate a closing in spring or summer of 2016, and we expect rehabilitation or the work to actually start in 2017. And we're looking into other opportunities in which we can use RAD at the rest of the NYCHA developments. The final initiative that I want to talk about, or development initiative, is the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative. So this Choice Neighborhoods Initiative an application was submitted for the area of Mott Haven in the Bronx. So we apply for a grant through HUD to implement a neighborhood revitalization plan. So it's not, our focus is on the housing part, but it's also getting other partners to help that would help with health initiatives and educational opportunities through the Choice Initiatives program. So we're still waiting on HUD to see if our application was accepted, but the planned scope, if we are accepted, is to redevelop a 1-story commercial building that will basically be a residential building with ground floor retail, and rehab a tenement building. So those are sort of the three elements of development that are in the Next Gen plan, and I'm going to turn it back to Brian Clark.
Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to talk to you about now is one of the objectives, one of the pillars that we have for our next generation NYCHA plan. And this is really changing the way in which we manage a property, right? Changing our organizational structures, changing the authority at the local level. And we call this project, it's a mouthful, is the Optimal Property Management Operating Model, or OPMOM. And what that really is implementing best practices in property management. Much simpler. And so we've started the pilot in January. It's at 18 developments, and the next slide will list them. And if you were to take a look at the organizational structure for how we run this pilot or department, it's very different from the organizational chart that we have for other property management developments. And what we've done is we've really removed the layers within it. You know, if you look at, let's say, Brooklyn property or Staten Island property management, have a director, a deputy director, administrator, and then you have the property manager. And many of the decisions are being made at the higher level, or being made at the more or less the borough office. And we think that the decision making and the resources and the accountability, and most importantly, I'm going to say it again, the decision making is made where we're closest to where you are delivering the services to our customers. And our customers are, certainly in property management, are our tenants. And where we really need to have that decision making and the resources is at that local level. And we're looking at the property manager as the decision maker there, as opposed to the property management office. And it's really going back to the way things were run in the Housing Authority, 20, 25 years ago, when the development was truly run by the property manager and the superintendent. And we're trying out a lot of the different best practices in pilot projects. So a couple of things that we have going on is what we're calling is our real-time repairs. It's part of our Fix It Forward program. So during apartment inspections, we're actually making repairs as we're doing the inspections. And the inspections are being performed on handheld devices by maintenance workers who actually work at that development. We are also dispatching workers on work orders. Right now, our developments, the way it works is a pile of work orders, paper work orders, are given to a maintenance worker or to skilled trades for them to do, during the day. It's very paper-driven. They go out, they'll complete the work, fill out the paperwork, and then it's handed back in to the management office. And depending upon the backlog and what's going on in that office, whether or not the information is put into the system in a timely manner, it can take anywhere from a couple of days to a few weeks to get that information in. And with real-time dispatching, as the work is assigned to a maintenance worker or skilled trade, they're actually put on the work order in our work order tracking system. And then when the work is completed, it's called back in, the information is put directly into the system, and the job is closed out. Same day started, same day closed out. And this actually does a lot of good things for us. One, it improves the accuracy of the data because it's not handwritten and handoff from one person to enter into the system to another. And it's real time, which really helps us with decision making. And another thing that we're trying out, and this is at our OPMOM developments in the Bronx, is a project that we're calling Call One, a one-call system. And what that means is when we've identified a repair that needs to be made in an apartment and it requires more than one trade, the entire repair is being planned out front. We're giving the dates when the work is going to start for each trade in the apartment unit, so a tenant will know exactly when they need to be home and how long the repair is actually going to take. Right now, the way we do it is it's in sequential order. As we create a work order, we schedule that work, it's closed out, then we schedule the next one, and it can actually take months to repair. So I'll give you a quick example. If there's work, if there's, let's say, a plumbing repair that requires us to do a wall break, the way it's currently done, first we send a maintenance worker. Maintenance worker checks it out, sees whether or not they can make the repair. If it's a wall break, they can't. So they'll go back, fill out the work order. It's actually handed off to the superintendent, and then work order is created for the plumber. That is then scheduled, the plumber completes the work, then it comes back, work order is created for the plasterer, that work is then scheduled, then when the plastering work is completed, then the painting work order is created and scheduled, and the repairs can actually take months to complete. With one call, the way it's going to work is we're going to send the maintenance worker, they're going to assess the job. When it comes back, we understand that it's going to require a plumber, plasterer, and painter. We're going to schedule that work with the tenant, so we're going to actually call them, schedule the work with them, to do the plumbing work, the plastering, and then the painting. And right now, based on, it'll probably be spread out over a few weeks, but one day our goal is to get to the point where the work starts Tuesday, continues Wednesday, and then finishes up Friday or the following Monday. So a lot of good things going on with OpMom. One of the key pieces is really communicating, involving our residents and our tenant associations, especially when there's priority work that needs to be done at the development. Who knows better about issues and concerns at the development than the folks that live there? So we're really making an extra effort to connect the management staff with the residents to make sure that they're communicating back and forth. We've also created a performance metric, a scorecard for each one of these developments, 4 broad categories. One is financial. So the property managers have all undergone extensive budget training to be a part of this project. And so we're actually monitoring each month how they're doing overall with their overall budget and their overtime budget, how they're doing with their rent collection, how they're doing with leasing up apartment units. Then we get more into process and procedures, and this is really focuses on repair. And our goal is to be, by the end of this year, at all of our OpMom developments, to be at a 7-day service level for routine maintenance. And we've already achieved that at 11 of the 18, and the other 7 are headed in the right direction. And we should be doing very well there. And then this third category that we have in the report card focuses 100% on customer satisfaction. So we have different indicators there. So we're going to be doing actual surveys of these developments as the project progresses. And then each month we're asking the TA president to fill out a report card on how she feels, or he or she feels, things are going at the development. How are the janitorial conditions? What are the major concerns? And then the last piece focuses in on safety and training and how we're doing with our safety performance. That's our number one priority, make sure that we're working safely and that our staff are protected and that our developments are safe. And then also making sure that the staff are attending all the training that's required. So we have a lot of good things going on with that project. We've had some really good indicators, so far. So we're looking forward to expanding that project, moving forward. So the next thing I'd like to discuss, and this is more procedural, having to do with this whole annual plan review process and town hall public meeting. Anytime we have significant changes to policy, we want to present that for the public to comment. And what we have in this annual plan is a proposed change to eligibility, selection, and admission policies. In order to comply with HUD requirements for reasonable accommodations, we need to change the priority for transfers that involve reasonable accommodations. Right now, it's in our system, it's a T3. Our highest priority is a T0, then we have a T1, T2, and there's all kinds of different categories for fitting into these different priorities. But the bottom line is a T3 is a relatively low priority, and it can take, depending upon the development of choice, can take a very long time for the transfer to take place. So with reasonable accommodations, these can be situations where somebody's life has changed significantly. They have mobility challenges now, and they may right now be housed in a non-elevator building, and they need to get into either a ground floor apartment or into an elevator building. And so if this is approved, that priority will be a T0, and those transfers move quite quickly. So if you'd like to comment on that, you can certainly do that here, or you can submit your comments in writing here as well, or you can even send them in to 250 Broadway. Okay? So with that, I'd like to bring up the very talented Tracy Smith to tell us all about our finances. Very exciting subject.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So right now I'm going to discuss NYCHA's financial resources, mainly the operating budget. So if you look at the first slide that we have up, you'll see our revenues versus our expenses. At this point, the revenue, the major drivers in the revenue budget are the federal operating subsidy, which is about 29%. There's also tenant rental revenue and fees, which is 32%. And then we also have Section 8 voucher or HAP funding, which represents about 32%. On the expense side, we have our major drivers, which are 40% employee compensation. We have about 30% in Section 8 voucher payments, and the remainder is the 18%, which is the utility payments. So if you can see from this slide, there's actually a $98 million operating deficit. As you can see, the expenses exceed the revenues. If we go to the next slide. So the next slide just talks about the per unit cost, revenue versus expenses. As you can see here also, in the monthly average unit cost, that the actual expenses to run in a unit is $1,012, where the revenue is $966. That gives us a 46 operating deficit per unit per month. The next slide talks about where we are today. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting off with a $98 million deficit, and we have some next generation NYCHA initiatives that will help us to decrease our deficit to $74 million. So the first item we have is $5 million in rental collection. We're going to try to increase our rent collection. The second item is $2 million in unfunded units. These are units that we're going to convert to receive subsidy. And then the next item is a pilot forgiveness or waiver. That brings our deficit down to $74 million. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Anne Marie, who's going to discuss flat rent.
Thank you, Tracy. Again, my name is Anne Marie Flatley, and I'm the Vice President for Research Management Analysis. I'm here to speak to you tonight about NYCHA's flat rent policy. Most of you in the room tonight, and actually within NYCHA, will not be affected by this change in the rents. The flat rents only affect about 20% of NYCHA's families who have higher incomes and pay less than 30% of income for their rent. Up until last year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who actually regulates all housing authorities, including NYCHA, allowed individual agencies to decide how much we charge for the flat rent or the maximum rents. Since 2006, NYCHA has been steadily increasing our rents for these families with lower incomes paying less in rent than families with higher incomes. Unfortunately, last year, Congress passed a new law which requires housing authorities to increase their flat rents over the next 3 years to a minimum of 80% of fair market rent, which is used in the Section 8 program. So, for example, a 2-bedroom apartment for a fair market rent is over $1,400 in New York. So our new minimum rent for a 2-bedroom, if you're at the flat rent, would be about $1,185. Again, no one is going to pay more than 30% of their income for rent. This is only affecting certain households that have higher incomes. So last year when this law was changed, we'd come out here to do these town hall meetings. We were also out this past spring. We had asked HUD, the Housing Authority of New York had asked HUD for permission to phase these rent increases in over 5 years. Given the large number of families affected and some of the large rent increases that people could encounter. HUD did not approve that request. What HUD is allowing us to do is to start our 3-year clock this June. So starting this June, there are additional rent increases going in, with the rent changing in November. The rents on the screen that you're looking at now are actually for 2016. They'll start with the June 2016 annual reviews and become effective in November. So as I said, most families will not be affected by these rent increases. So if you're in a studio apartment, your income has to be at least $25,600. If you're in a one-bedroom, your income has to be at least $26,760. For a two-bedroom, $31,680. For a three-bedroom, $40,760. A four-bedroom, $45,680. And a five-bedroom, $52,480. And for those of you in a six-bedroom, $59,360. If you're in that size apartment and your income is below that amount, you'll continue to pay the regular income-based rent or 30% of your income for rent. We do have detailed rent tables at the tables on the side. We have them available to show the rent by income level, bedroom size, and family size. They're available in Spanish, Chinese, and Russian in addition to English, and we also have them available on the website. I'm happy to take, after the presentation, questions about the flat rent and how it could affect your family. I can speak to you, directly in private, or I can answer questions directly from the audience. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Patricia Zander from our Capital Projects Department.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk to you about how we look at the revenues we have from the federal government, local revenue stream that comes into us that helps us to pay for the construction projects that we have planned. And generally how we do that is we have, let's talk about federal first. What you're looking at right now is the 5-year capital federal plan for construction projects for NYCHA. You can see that almost 50% of this pie goes toward brick roofs and windows, and there's a reason for that. Bricks, roofs, and windows are our first line of defense to protect our property and to maintain the integrity of our properties. The good news is that we have some interesting projects going on here in Staten Island. Toad Hill, for example, we have exterior compactors. At Berry Housing, we have boiler replacements going on. And then going back to what I just mentioned before, Cassidy Lafayette, we have bricks, roofs, railings, and some mechanical, electrical, plumbing work there as well. So in our 5-year capital plan, we have some ongoing work here in Staten Island. Within the federal plan, we have other initiatives. We have something called Bond B. And again, I'm happy to report, and Bond B is strictly bricks, roofs, projects. And we have work going on at Mariners Harbor, West Brighton, a New Lane, Berry again, Berry Housing, and Richmond Terrace. So again, our goals with capital planning is to preserve our housing stock and to improve the quality of life for our residents. Next slide. I can't see the slide. Is it sources? So sources of additional capital funding. So in addition to that money we were just looking at, which the pie represented about $811 million, we have also a revenue stream of capital funds of about $3 billion. And that is coming from 4 different places you'll see on the slide. So we have revenue going to city capital projects, and they're small projects, ramps, community center upgrades, security projects. And of course, a large amount of that is going to the Sandy recovery. So we have a revenue stream from FEMA, and we've got about $3 billion projected for that. And as you know, that's all about, our initiatives there are about resiliency. And in the slide, you can see that the building, the small building that you see on the exterior of the residential housing there is a a good way or a strategy that we are using to make sure that our energy systems are well above the 100-year flood stage going forward. So in that building, we have all the energy systems protected. The mayor's action plan, of course, is for exterior lighting. We're all about security, anti-violence campaigns, and then interesting revenue. For asset forfeiture, we're repurposing money from drug raids, sting operations, and this money is being repurposed for security improvements. We've got about $100 million in reallocated funding there. So to recap, basically the capital planning strategy is to align capital construction, look at day-to-day maintenance and operations. We want to align ourselves with our OpMom people. And we're looking to see how we can also align ourselves with as Amy was talking about, future development of affordable housing. So we're just looking to identify strategies, in the capital planning group. Again, we're looking to arrest building deterioration where we can. We've got these average age buildings from 40 to 50 years of age. First line of defense is to, try to keep the skin intact of a building, the bricks and the roofs, right, to keep the water out, which is all about structural integrity of the building. It affects the structural integrity of the building. These aren't sexy things, perhaps, but they're very important initiatives that we really feel that there's, we put a lot of money and thought into and strategy into why we pick these bricks and roofs as our first line of defense. We're looking at operational efficiencies, development size, and site plans. So all that goes into capital planning strategies. Thank you for your time.
So we hope that as many people as possible have the opportunity to express their comments. So before we begin, let's go over the following ground rules. If you wish to speak, you must fill out a speaker slip, which are available to the side with Makiba Price. So please line up at the microphones at the center aisles and wait your turn to speak. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and on the stage you'll see a timer. Actually, where is the timer? Oh, right behind me. Yes, that'd be helpful on the stage. With 3 lights. When you begin to speak, the green light will be on and the timer will begin to count down. When the yellow light is lit, it means you should start to conclude your remarks. When the red light is turned on, your 3 minutes to provide comment are over. A table has been set up to the side so that written comments may also be submitted. Numbered speaker slips are non-transferable, and if you are not present or do not wish to speak when your name and number is called, you will forfeit your opportunity to speak. The town hall is being recorded and transcribed by a stenographer, so please speak only from the microphones in the aisles and identify yourself, your development, or your affiliation. Remember that we are here to comment on NYCHA's 2016 annual plan and the significant amendment. Any personal comments on, criticisms of, or oral attacks on NYCHA personnel, resident representatives, and public attendees, or any demeaning, discriminatory, or ethnic slurs or vulgar language will not be tolerated. I, as the moderator of this evening's meeting, reserve the right to immediately move on to the next speaker online if any comments are deemed inappropriate. The moderator is in charge of the town hall. Please be considerate of your neighbors and obey the moderator's directions. We are here to consider issues that are of concern to everyone, not issues that concern only a single resident or individual. If you have an issue that concerns only you or your apartment, we have tables set up to the side specifically for that purpose. You may fill out a resident response form at the table marked Resident Complaints. As stated before, we have general information tables available to the side where leaflets and flyers may be displayed. Resource tables have been set up with information, so at the end of the meeting you can pick up information on topics that may be of interest to you, including resident and economic empowerment and sustainability, fair housing, family services, and citywide programs. So at this point, I would like to open it up to any speakers or comments. Anybody? Well, what we can do, because I believe we're still waiting for some people to come, we can wait for some more minutes in case anybody else comes in and is interested in commenting, or if there are people here that are interested, that are working on developing their comments or their questions. So we'll put it on hold for about 15 minutes. So good evening, everyone. We'd like to open up, We'd like to open up the floor again to see if there's any comments or questions in regard to the 2016 draft annual plan and the amendment to the 2015 plan. So any comments or any questions? Looks like no. So at this point, we'd like to thank you all for coming out, and this concludes the Staten Island Town Hall meeting. So thank you very much.